what does it mean to ask a philosophical question? For example, when a philosopher talks about life, what is life? The topic of philosophy is not here a scientific topic. It's not what is the real nature of life, what is life as a natural phenomenon. You know, when, for example, scientists, and today they can do it very well, they try to see or to isolate, to analyze at what level can you talk about a living being? What level of interaction of particles can be defined as life, so that we can say that thing, object is alive. No, philosophy is doing something different. Philosophy asks what Martin Heidegger would have called the hermeneutic question of understanding. The problem of philosophy is, when we, for example, ask the question, what is life? We always already have a certain pre-understanding of what life is. For example, when you move around in your everyday activities, you identify certain objects as alive. And what philosophy does is simply to ask the question, how do you always already understand life so that you identify something as living or not living, and so on and so on. Benjamin Libet, an American cognitivist scientist, I think he made, probably most of you know about it, this famous experiment where he asked a person to do some simple gesture without planning it. Like, what he proved then was that before you make a conscious decision, part of a second before, the orders on your neurons to move your hand are already given. So that when you think you decide something, your brain at neuronal level has already decided it. When we make the most arbitrary decision, we don't really decide at that point. We just become aware of something which was already decided, which already happened in our brain. Things get even more complicated with some other experiments. For example, there are well-known experiments, they did it with rats, you know, the small, disgusting animals, where they succeeded in connecting their neurons. It's at a very elementary level, those who give orders to move, in what direction to move with the computer. And then if you click a button, press the button, the rat is connected to your computer, and you can direct it like a toy, like a remote control car. What is a little bit terrifying about this experiment is the following question. How do you experience it when you are directed like this? Do you experience it as being under control of another external power? You know, like, oh my God, now I no longer decide what I'm doing, some foreign power is controlling me? Or are you still freely deciding? The sad result is that people still think they're freely deciding. It's pretty terrifying. You are effectively directed left, right, to wander around, but you are not aware of it, that you are controlled. Now, things like this allegedly prove that there is no free will. But did you notice that when I asked this question, do we have a free will? And then when I described this experiment, we all if you followed me, we all already used the term free will or freedom in a certain way. And the philosophical problem would have been not are we really free or not, but in what way do we understand freedom so that we can even ask this question? This is the transcendental question. The problem of a philosopher here is simply how can we bring together or how can we distinguish these two different levels of talking about truth? That all this is what simply we humans project onto it. So you see what's the difficult task of philosophy. It's not just the question, are we free or not? It is, how do we understand freedom? What is freedom? And this general horizon, again, of how we understand things, this is for Heidegger the event. His idea is that each historical epoch is grounded in an event. Event is not something happens empirically. Event is the way reality is disclosed to us. You know where you can feel this dimension of event? Didn't it happen to you at a more modest level that you talk with someone about some political phenomenon or whatever, but then all of a sudden you notice that literally you are not talking about the same thing? Because the other person lives in a different universe of meaning. That for Heidegger, from the Heideggerian perspective, to ask the naive realist question, okay, we have different horizons of meaning. We live in a certain society which is determined through scientific discourse or modern subjective experience. In medieval times, they lived in a different society or whatever. But which of them has the true view of reality? Like, which of them is closer to truth? Is it that there is some truth in traditional wisdom, you know, that there is an inner value, meaning in objects, or is it this modern scientific approach which is more true? The ontic question. The question of, but how things are in themselves. It's rarely noticed, but this question persists also in Heidegger. Heidegger himself, in a way, admits that, for example, a letter from his philosophical colleague from 50s, Heidegger asked this question. I quote Heidegger, "I often ask myself, this has for a long time been a fundamental question for me. What nature would be without man? Must it, nature, not resonate through man in order to attain its ownmost potency?" So Heidegger does ask repeatedly, you shouldn't confuse transcendental horizon with ontic causality. Heidegger is not saying that by us, we humans, by understanding things in a certain way, by perceiving them within a certain horizon of meaning, that we humans are creating things. Transcendental horizon does not mean ontic creation. It does not mean we are causing things. And Heidegger makes it very clear where he repeatedly says, before there was ontology, disclosure of being, what he's talking about. Of course, in a way, something was there. I mean, Earth or whatever. But Heidegger would have said it didn't fully exist. Because for Heidegger, to exist means to appear within a certain disclosure of being, to appear within a certain horizon of being. So let me give you here another quote by Benjamin, well-known one. "The past carries with it a temporal index by which it is referred to redemption. There is a secret agreement between past generations and the present one. our coming was expected on earth. Like every generation that preceded us, we have been endowed with a weak messianic power, a power to which the past has a claim. End of quote. So the question here is, how far should we go along this way? Do we limit the logic of this retroactive redemption in the sense that a certain past political project or whatever acquires meaning only afterwards, retroactively? Only to human history, or does this hold also for humanity? Heidegger here sometimes, for example, in his incredibly interesting lectures, his seminar from the year 2930, The Fundamental Concepts of Metaphysics, Heidegger plays with the idea which is well known in European mysticism, and Benjamin also takes it over, that, I quote here, if deprivation in certain forms is a kind of suffering, and poverty and deprivation of world belongs to the animal's being, then a kind of pain and suffering would have to permeate the whole animal realm and the realm of life in general. This is this crazy mystical speculative idea that there is some kind of pain, suffering at work in living nature as such, and that, as Benjamin puts it somewhere, when we humans started to speak, our speech, as it were, is the way nature was able to, through us humans, nature was able to articulate its pain. Humans live and speak of nature, and in this way nature itself comes to articulate its pain. Now you will say this is crazy mysticism, this is anthropocentric position. You know, again, to make it a little bit clearer what Heidegger is talking here about. In this seminar of 2930, Heidegger tries to define a difference between a plant, an animal, and a human being. And he says a plant is weltlos, without a world. A plant or a stone, it just is there. It doesn't relate properly. Then the mystery emerges with animals. Heidegger claims an animal does relate to a world. It relates to its environs for food and so on, but is weltarm, poor in the world. Like only we humans are fully in the world. But then of course the question emerging here, are we not already privileging humans in this way? Is an animal weltarm, poor in the world, just compared to us humans who are fully in the world in the sense that within a certain disclosed meaningful reality, or are animals already in themselves deprived? Heidegger, interestingly, doesn't want to decide here, because as a hermeneutic philosopher, he should have said, no, we can only talk about the way things appear within our human horizon. But at the same time, he is again and again bothered by this idea that what if, as it were, what if there is already a certain suffering and so on at work in nature itself, so that we humans are the site where this pain, or whatever we call it, in nature emerges. Here is a quote from a young American philosopher, Aaron Schuster, which makes this point nicely. Quote, imagine all of nature waiting for the gift of speech so it can express how bad it is to be a vegetable or a fish. Is it not the special torment of nature to be deprived of the means of conveying its aggravation, unable to articulate even the simplest lament. Ah me, I am the sea. And does not the emergence on earth of the speaking being effectively release this terrible organic tension and bring it to a higher level of non-resolution? How can we properly understand? Now my problem is this one. How can we understand this speculation about nature without falling into cheap New Age mysticism? Here